So there we were beneath the burning sky. Both had a reason to live, but so much more to die. Will fate decide who has to go? Oh, oh. We both know pain, but we deal it too. Who's dealt more? Well, I leave that up to you.
Hi, I'm Daniel with Daniel Scott Films. I specialize in music video production in and around the Midwest area. Today we're going to be talking about a special software called Dehancer. And if you've been a filmmaker for a while, you've heard of Dehancer, but there's a lot of things you may not know about Dehancer and how well it could actually apply a film-like look to your modern digital footage. So Dehancer is available for Davinci Resolve, which is my editor of choice, and that's what this review is based off of. And they also have Davinci Premiere Pro and Final Cut, and they have an iOS app that you can install on your phone for on-the-go creators that have an iPhone. But it's not available for Android yet, so I'm an Android user, so shout out. If I can get that app for Android, that would be awesome. But I know not everybody is an Android person. So whether you're looking to be the next Tarantino, shooting that 65mm celluloid film, or you're looking for like a very nostalgic 8mm film with a shot on my Bolex, I think it's a great choice because it gives you these creative freedoms that you can't get with film, but it looks so close to film. I'm just so excited to use it every time I open it up and discover what kind of possibilities or what kind of tone, what kind of vibe am I looking for. Even if I'm looking for something that's like very clinical, it's just a slight film edge that I want on it, maybe to just take off the digital edge on it. I think it's just a great option. In addition to film stock emulation, you have the ability to control things like grain, overscans, bloom, halation, and plenty of other tools. So in addition to the film stock emulation, Dehancer has the ability to add like halation and bloom and control things like grain and overscans and with the gate movement, because when you shoot on a film camera, like the film actually moves through the gate that it's captured on, and not every frame is lined up perfectly. So there's like these little micro movements going on with each frame, and I just think it's kind of cool that Dehancer took the time and the detail to look into those things to make it look so close to film. It's so cool. I should also note that I'm not a professional colorist. I don't claim to be, but I will say that Dehancer takes a lot of that mystery out of it. I understand the color management workflow that you really should understand to take advantage of Dehancer, but a lot of the things that Dehancer has built in is going to save you tons of time. It doesn't require a professional colorist to take a look at, but this is a tool that professional colorists actually use in addition to their current tool set. So one of the great resources that I found exists is actually on the Dehancer website. They talk about using Dehancer with different workflows. Like, so if you're working in an ACES color management workflow, or if you're just using like a Rec 709, like what does that process look like? So a lot of these things I'm going to be referring to that information on Dehancer's website. So I'm not going to knock people that want to shoot on film. I think that, at least for me, like I haven't shot on film yet, but I think that shooting on film is a rite of passage, to be a legit filmmaker. I know that there's, other opinions on that, but, I think that shooting on film has all the stuff that Dehancer tries to emulate. So if you're shooting on film, you're getting exactly that. You're shooting on film. You're getting that film look right out the gate. But you have to understand that film is expensive. Like even if you're shooting on 16mm film, like a 4-minute roll, which is I think like 100 or 400 feet or something like that, it's going to easily cost you around like $400 to develop. To purchase, develop, and scan that into digital so that you can actually edit it through a modern editor, as opposed to doing it the old school way and then you'd actually have to, develop it on a positive, to distribute to do film to the theaters, to show on. So there's a whole process with that. So for me, the nostalgia of being involved with that process is something that I would love to get into, but cost is a main prohibitor for me of doing that. And also, I live in Wichita, Kansas, so there's no rental houses around here. So you need to live close to a big filming metro community like Los Angeles, Atlanta, New York, North Carolina, somewhere around those bigger cities, at least the cities that have a rental house within like an hour drive. So yeah, anyway, but you also have to consider that if you're shooting on film, you have a certain look that is, it's going to be baked in globally. You just can't take that out once it's been shot. And I think that's kind of the joy of shooting in film, is like, exactly what you want, and that's how it's going to be. Nobody is going to touch that look in post because you shot it in film. So you just can't take out the grain, at least, very easily take it out. But it's always easier to add artifacts in and as opposed to take them out. So let's go into reasons why you might want to consider using a film emulator. One is obviously, we talked about the cost, right? Cost is, it's really expensive to shoot on film. So purchasing Dehancer is a no-brainer if you don't want to spend tons of time and money and some of the overhead costs that involve film. So another thing is like the cost of diffusion filters. I shoot on Super 35 digitally most of the time, so I'm using the 4x5 filters, and then those can, like brand new, those like $350 a pop from an established brand like Schneider or Tiffin. And so that's gonna add up pretty quickly. And with the cost of like a 4x6, you can easily get one of those easily cost like $500. That's crazy. So with the cost of the Dehancer Pro plugin, that would easily cover that just in substitution of one diffusion filter. You're also getting the flexibility in post. You're getting the ability to shoot something as a standard look, whether you're shooting in log, and then you're getting the base look down, you're getting the skin tones perfect, and then you would go through in post and decide, all right, well, what type of look am I going for on top of it? Maybe you decide that one film is what you were going for, but then the director comes by and says, hey, you know what, can we make it look like this other film stock? Well, certainly, because we shot it digitally, and we're just going to change that with a click of a few buttons, and then boom, you're done. Another big flexible thing you can do with Dehancer in post is that you have the ability to control the look of your diffusion or the other effects that Dehancer, like halation. You can actually create a mask around just a section of the frame that you want, and you can control just that section. It's crazy. You definitely can't do that. You can't film with a filter, like physical filter, and say, hey, you know what, I want this filter to only affect just the face, or this light source over here. So having that just really allows you to really nail down what you think is going to look best in post. So another thing is like critical focus. When you put diffusion filters in front of your camera, you're actually making it a little bit more difficult to focus, because it adds a little bit of declarity to your look. So finding that critical focus is just going to be a tad bit more difficult with using a physical filter. So if you are not a very skilled focus puller, you're looking at the focus peaking, and you want to make sure that it's giving you the most accurate focus that you can get, having no obstructions from the lens and your subject is going to be optimal. So another thing is, like, when you put filters or anything in front of your lens, so especially if you have like two filters that sandwich together, that light is coming in from your lens through the filters and into your sensor, and then back out. And then so you have a bunch of light that's kind of being reflected in, and a lot of times you'll get like double glare reflections, and you're like, where is this coming from? And it's really hard to eliminate it. You can use it by kind of blocking some of the light. So if I were to kind of block this light over here, but then you're blocking the light that's hitting your subject. So you're adding some limitations by actually shooting with film as opposed to just digitally emulating a filter in post. So can you achieve the same look using native tools, specifically in Davinci Resolve, that could possibly be achieved using Dehancer? I think so. I know that Darren Moston did a side-by-side comparison where he grade something using Dehancer, and then he uses the film looks tool that's available only in Davinci Resolve Studio. So that's the paid version of Davinci Resolve Studio. From Darren Moston's side-by-side comparison, I thought that it was a great, and I think he did really good to getting very, very close, but he is a professional colorist and knows exactly what to look for, and is very nuanced in getting it to look exactly right, or close to being right. So Dehancer offers many of its features as standalone products as either subscription or lifetime options. So for example, the Dehancer Pro lifetime license, $549, but they also have a $59 monthly subscription if it's a little bit too big of a bite for you to chew on. But if you're just wanting, just the bloom or the halation or the breath and damage, you can purchase those individually if you don't need the whole thing together. And so there's plenty of options to choose from that can fit anybody's budget. They're kind enough to provide my viewers with a 10% discount code, DSFilms, and I also get 10% to help me create content like this. So I win, you win, so thank you for helping out with my channel. All right, so next we're going to go over some film that I recorded a couple weeks ago on a beautiful ranch here close to Wichita, Kansas. And it was a beautiful day, and we are going to give it a kind of a neat little nostalgic look. All right, so we are going to start out with a new node, and this is after we have done our transform. So this is this node right here is basically our input transform and then our output transform, and then so we are outputting to Rec 709, and so here we're going to drop in Dehancer. And then we are going to make sure that this is Rec 709 because that's the color space that we have output to. So at this point, we're working in a Rec 709 color space. And per Dehancer's instructions, the Dehancer node will always go at the end of the chain. So that's really important. And so by default, we have Codec Vision 3. And what I want to get is Fujichrome Provia. I think it has a nice warm look, and it kind of instantly adds that nostalgic country western look to it. And so we are going to kind of play around with some of the controls a little bit. So this is the film developer, and so if we enable this, it's going to change the look based off of what would typically be added in chemically to treat the film negative to get the look that you want from the processor. And then so let's go on to film compression. Let's go ahead and enable this. Let's go ahead and change our white point a little bit. Tonal range, color intensity. We'll just leave that as default, and then expand. This is where we can set our black point. I don't want to go too deep with it. And our white point with it. Okay. And then we are going to work with our print. And what I'm going to do is choose a Kodak 2383 film. And this is the look that you would achieve traditionally if you were to send it off to a processing lab to be printed into a positive. And then so we can change some of these attributes here. We're going to leave the default. And here in the color head, you can actually change some of the colors. I'm going to disable that because I like it the way it is. And then you have film grain. And so by default, it's going to add quite a aggressive amount of grain. But if I'm looking for something that's more of a traditional, 35 millimeter kind of grain, I'm going to dial it back a little bit. And just so you can kind of see the detail, I'm going to zoom in here a little bit. And then this is if it were really aggressive. Again, you can select an 8 millimeter ISO 500 to kind of give it kind of a really deep grain. But again, for what I'm doing, I think a conservative grain is kind of what I'm after. So next we have halation and bloom, and so we are going to start off with the bloom. I'm going to choose custom and then play around with the impact. You can kind of see how much this is affecting that area. Details. Let me kind of come back a little bit, see the whole frame. Here it is enabled and then disabled. And then we can go to the halation. And the halation is going to be more prominently seen on the edges of contrast areas. And then you can see that it has kind of like this orangish hue. Again, this is enabled, this is disabled. And then I want to change the diffusion a little bit where it's going to bleed out a little bit. We can change the hue if I don't want it to make it look so orangish. I think that's where I want it. And next we have the film damage, and then so you have a lot of flexibility to get as dirty and as clinical as you wish in here. And so you can change the amount of jitter, the scale of the scratches and dust. It's a little bit different, and I think it's a little bit more organic looking than the native dust and scratch distortion that's natively available in Davinci Resolve. And I prefer this look right here. I think it adds a lot of flexibility here. And it just looks more natural, I think. And next we have our film breadth and gate weave. And what's really cool about this is that Dehancer really pays attention to the emulated look as if film were being moved through the gate of a traditional film camera. And so there's going to be some imperfections with how one frame is aligned to the previous frame, and there's some inconsistency there, so some bumping and moving a little bit. It's very subtle, but once you put all these elements together, you can really emulate the look of film. And I think this is a great tool to have at your disposal. And so we're going to go ahead and leave this. I'm going to say that we'll go ahead and change both of these to a 16 millimeter, because I think that 35 millimeter just doesn't, it hardly moves at all. And I like to see just a little bit of that movement through the gate. And next we have the overscan, which is the overlay of the film itself, that being the perforations and the edges of the film frames. And so just to give you an example, let me go ahead and enable this. And then so this is a 16 millimeter with, looks like a 2 perf, and then you have ultra 16, and then you have your widescreen, and then let's go to a Panavision 65 here. Look at all those perforations in there. That film is massive. And so I'm going to leave this disabled, so I don't wish to show the perforations or the overscanning. Next is the vignette, and I do think vignette plays a key role in film emulation, but you have to use it with subtle reserve. The other tools we have here are monitoring, so if we want to monitor the false color, and we have the output, and this is going to globally blend the effects for Dehancer in with our original footage. And then we have a LUT generator, so if we want to export this as our own LUT, we can do that. And so let's go ahead and play back some of this footage. And I'm going to see how this plays along with some of the other footage without kind of doing a deep grade on all the rest of them. You can tell like the film damage is pretty aggressive here, but just to kind of show what that does, it's pretty awesome. It just looks super cool. So here's without Dehancer, and here's with. Again, we have film damage, we have halation, we have bloom, we have vignette, we have the gate movements, and so all of that comes together to give this really cool film look that would be difficult to be achieved natively. All right, so I wanted to test out Dehancer's ability to match a physical filter, that being the Promist half strength filter. And then so I set it up in a studio environment, and one is applied with, one is applied without. So here is the Promist half strength, and then here is the regular. And then so the way to do this is after we have, so we're working in a Davinci intermediate color space, but we are always going to apply the Dehancer node after the last node. So we are going to add that in here, and then I am going to disable everything in here because I only want to apply the effects for the bloom and halation. There's bloom and there's halation. Okay, I'm going to work on one at a time here, and then so by default 35mm Super 35 is selected, and I want to do custom because I want to have complete control over my settings here. So I'm going to set the impact over here, and I think I want to set the diffusion up first. It's pretty wide. Source limiter, highlights, bring that down a little bit. Amplify, I want to amplify that quite a bit. Diffusion, it's a lot of pushing and pulling into different directions. Details. Okay, I think that's the best I'm going to get it for right now. I'm going to go into halation, and then I'm going to select custom, and then I'm going to just play around with some of these tools. Source limiter, bring this down a little bit. Background gain. Bring hue up. Blue compensation. I don't think it does a whole lot. Global diffusion. I'm going to increase that a bit. Local diffusion. There's a lot of glow. A lot of pushing and pulling here. Here's the source limiter. Seems like it's limiting to more of the highlights, and that's kind of what I want. But I still want to change the hue more to gold and less of a red. Let's go back to bloom and then move these controls a little bit. Bump that diffusion all the way up. You see, like the saturation does a whole lot there. I think most of the color is coming from the halation. I wish there was a saturation knob for halation. Let's go ahead and toggle to see how close I am. So the one on the right, see that the wipe on the right, that's the original. This is the more edited version. And so, man, I think there's still work that can be done. Global diffusion. It's way too much. Let's toggle. So I want that nice desaturated yellow. And I think that's got to be adjusted here. I think the only way I can really have control over that is through the impact. I really wish that there was a saturation knob here. That would give me a lot more flexibility to recreating what I'm trying to do here. I think that's probably the closest I'm going to get. Now that we have bloom and halation, we're going to take advantage of Dehancer's ability to modify the masking that's available. You know, we can't do this with traditional film stock. So I want to show you how to do that. So right now, I have both bloom and halation enabled. However, if I want to just select one area that I want the bloom to affect, there's a couple steps that's needed. First of all, I'm going to select mask mode here and here. It's going to change it dark. And what I need to do here is change the composite mode for this node to add. And then I'm going to go over to my power window and then simply adjust my settings here. And now I can drag this power window wherever I want. I mean, I can use the pen tool. I can use just a square. Here I have an ellipse tool. And so you can really take advantage of this, what it has to offer here. And so one thing to note though, especially if you're using the bloom and halation in general, you want to go to your project settings and then go to image scaling and then make sure it's set to bilinear. All right, so I think we got really close to emulating the look of a Promist half strength. We were almost there. I think that if we tab back and forth, I think it's very close. I think that there's a couple things that would make Dehancer, bloom, and halation even better, and that is a desaturation knob on the halation tool, and maybe a way to kind of fine-tune the source where it emulates from. I know that we had the source limiter, but I feel like there's something missing there that would give us more control over the source. I'm not sure if that would be like a curves adjustment layer or if it's linear, or just improve the linear function that it is. You know, I think that there's definitely room to grow. The bloom, I feel like, even though I think that with the strength of the bloom, I think we got there, but I feel that it could be pushed even further as far as the strength of the bloom. So Dehancer, is it going to bring the death of shooting film? You know, is there a reason to shoot on film anymore? I don't think that that's the case. I think that there's a special characteristic and quality that you get with actual shooting film that Dehancer just can't replace, but it can come close. And I think for people who are looking for the nostalgic look without breaking the bank and having flexibility in post, if sometimes you really need those things, even on higher budgets, where you just need that flexibility in post. But like film is resolute, it's final, it's marked in ink from the day that you press the record button. So there's something very true and original and respectful about that art and that process. Is film going to die out one day? I don't see that happening anytime soon. But I think that the developer houses, I think that they're still going to be in business processing film for us filmmakers and doing all that. But there's plenty of opportunity for film emulators like Dehancer to make that film look more accessible, more available to people like me that don't have $100,000 budgets or more for projects. All right, so that's it, guys. If you guys were hoping for more, a longer video, I hate to let you down, but I've got to go. Don't forget to use the code DSFilms at checkout at dehancer.com for that 10% discount. I'll see you later.